Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle. Delighted to be able to say we're still top of the table, top of the league. Six of the best, five on the spin. Life is looking good. And one of the things we're going to debate tonight, threw it out on social media. What do you think is the biggest difference between Notts County of this season compared to the Notts County of last season? Had lots of answers already out there on social media, which we shall be reading out and getting the thoughts of Mark Stallard very shortly. Do you think we are now playing the kind of football consistently that can genuinely get us promoted as champions? Also, you may have seen in the press this week, Wrexham, Paul Mullin had put a bit of a political message on his boots, to his Liverpool socialist roots, caused a few ructions. Wrexham told him to remove the message on his boots. So Macaulay Langstaff's boots, that are clearly scoring more goals than Paul Mullins at the moment, and just about everybody else. What message would we suggest? Polite, please, printable. That Macaulay could put on his boots. Don't know whether he has a boot deal. I'm sure he will be having one very soon if he's not. All this and more on tonight's show. Lots of stuff coming in. What I'm going to start with before going to Stel for his critique is to read out your thoughts and views on our Twitter and Facebook feeds in response to that question. What's the big difference for you between Notts now and Notts last season? Dale NCFC 1862 says the manager and some bloke up front. I think he's called Macca Harland. Andy Flan says intensity, physicality, work rate, better set pieces, two great strikers. Dean Fisher, much better without the ball now. Closing down is intense. Ian Cooksey, the main difference is the manager. He knows what he's doing and the players are buying into it. A big thank you to Forest Green. Stuart Anderson, I'd say a better manager and a quality striker. Neil says night and day. A proper forward and striker, stealing midfield and pressing to win the ball back as a team. Not passing the ball about for the sake of it, but being incisive every time we go forward. Huge credit to the coaching staff and the players for buying into it and executing it. Leon Barber says mindset from the top. Approach when we lose the ball. Chris Gosling, tempo, intensity, tenacity, and togetherness. Oh, and Luke Williams. Will Gresley, intensity, desire to get the ball back quickly, possession with purpose. Jeff Smith, don't mess around so much, passing across the face of the goal, and 2 steps forward, 3 sideways and backwards. Cost us a fair few goals last season. Richard Anscombe, urgency, commitment, and a top-notch goal scorer. Steve Boddice, basically we have 2 goal scorers, and Luke Williams has got so much improvement from all of the squad. We simply look a different team than we did under IB, where we looked very average away from home. Ian Laxton, we now have a proper manager and a goal scorer. Simples. Paul Linley, a striker that's putting the ball in the onion bag, not conceding last minute sloppy goals. Brackets. Yeah, always put a caveat, as you do, Paul. Not so far anyway. Stel, looks like you're in your golf gear. I gather you've had a bit of a long journey back this afternoon. Glad you've got on here in time. We can dissect the game and everything shortly, but I mean, you've listened to all those observations. What are your thoughts? What's the biggest difference for you to Notts County under Luke Williams in the first 15 games to taking, if you like, an aggregate snapshot of Notts under Ian Birchinall over 46 games last year?
Yeah, well, if you want one thing, one thing that I've said a few times on the radio for me, and a lot of people have nailed it there. It is, for all the good football they're playing, for all the goals they're scoring, it is out of possession of the ball. They are pressing quickly, high up the pitch, winning the ball back. That's tempo, intensity of the of being out of possession of the ball. That for me is the biggest marked difference between what we've seen so far this season and what we saw last season. At times last season, the football was fantastic. Let's not forget that. Let's not be under any illusions. But the biggest difference, the biggest sea change, has been out of possession of the ball. Last season, I think it was, just get back in your shape. Try not to be beaten easily. Now there's a definite intensity to the work rate, a desire to go and get the ball back quickly within them 5 or 6 seconds. Them transitions you always hear about, turnovers of possession, and I think they've been fantastic at it. And hopefully they can keep it going for 46 games. It takes a hell of a lot of hard work, mentality, drive, hunger, because that is, passing and controlling, shooting. When you're with the ball, that comes a heck of a lot easier than it does trying to get the ball back. So I think the biggest change for me has been that desire and drive instilled from the top, but carried out by the players to go and get the ball back and hunt impacts, not just one and two where you get picked off, with a pass or a couple of passes and you get picked off, going as a team. And I think that's been phenomenal so far this season.
Yeah, I think possibly an adjective that widely used with just about everybody there is the word intensity. And you've thrown in words like desire as well. And I guess it was quite a analytical approach last season, and football ultimately still remains a game of emotion, doesn't it? And for me now, there's a brand of football, an efficient use of the way we play that potentially gets you promoted, gets you championships. I've hung some shirts up behind me. The common factor with all of those is that those shirts were all worn by teams that got promoted and won something. Um, it's far, far too early. We're only a third of the way through the season. Um, do you think Notts have right now, if you can maintain it, the formula that gets you up?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the big caveat, the big elephant in the room there is if they can maintain it. Remember in this division, Grimsby ran away at the start of the season last season until we played them. There's teams get out the blocks quickly and then fall away. And as ever, it's only where you are at the end of the season that matters, not where you are at any point really through it. But going back to the formula, have they got it? The way they're playing, I said last night on the radio, there's only 2 or 3 teams in this division that could even live with us, and that's not to say would beat us. That is even live with us at this level. The way they're playing at the minute, and the way they're playing, nobody beats us. We beat everybody. The way we're playing. Um, but we know football doesn't work like that. It's not as simple. But that's the beauty, and that's another pat on the back for the players and the manager and the coaches, is that for 15 games, pretty much with 1 or 2 exceptions, but that's as far as games, they've done it. They've played with that instinct, that intensity, tempo, desire, hunger, whatever adjective you want to use for it. But they've played and they've looked, at relative levels, they look like the Man City of the National League so far. I say you joke, but last night it was, Wheelstone, after the game, I said that they had a group huddle on the pitch, the manager and a bit of a team talk on the pitch. And you got the impression, because it's only a small ground and you're close to it, couldn't hear anything what was said. But their skipper walked across. He obviously had family or friends right near where we were commentating. And you got the impression he'd come over with a sort of look on his face as if to say, wow, you know, you get the impression that they sort of said, the manager said, and the players felt, hey, don't worry about that. That's no disgrace getting beat 6-1 at home to that lot, because they are levels above what you're going to face week in, week out. And that's the biggest compliment I think I can give Notts at the minute is, 6 wins on the spin, all the good performances, the goals. They are playing in a ruthless manner like Man City do to obviously better teams and with better play, but like Man City do in the Premier League. And that's exactly how Notts have been in the National League so far. We're only a third of the way through the season, so long way to go. But if they can maintain it, crikey me, they have got the formula to go up and win the league. Yeah.
Lots of observations coming in. Chris Gosling was a terrible journey home last night, but worth the effort. Compare and contrast it to the corresponding fixture last season, and that tells you everything you need to know about how improved we are. Lee Brearley, very early in the season, but why should we not bask in this fine football we are playing? Dale Pikett, the difference is the manager. Evening from Andrew Blatherwick. Joseph Spink says the work rate is phenomenal now, driving forward and really moving for each other. A real joy to watch. Karen Knight says, hello, everyone. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm finding it difficult not to feel excited about what we are doing. I know it's early, but dot, dot, dot. To Jurgen Halligan, downfall last season was our away form. Absolutely, Jurgen. Playing much better away from home this season. Chris B says, intensity is the biggest difference for me out of possession. Evening all from Shane Walker. Catherine Simkis did not get home till after 2. Yeah, after I've got a confession to make, Stel. I didn't make it. Well,
Yeah, you said.
as some of you may know, I was out in Qatar pre-World Cup trip, and I also popped over to Abu Dhabi for the big UFC 280 gig as well, which was very good. I'll tell you the story later in the program about I ended up in the steam room with Habib Nurmagomedov, who if you know UFC, was probably the all-time greatest UFC fighter. But we'll go into that later. And
Not
to
your
be honest,
body
I
double.
didn't get home till very late. And I thought, do I go or don't I? And I bottled it. I didn't go, and I miss a game like that. I miss a game like that.
I say he's not your body double, is he, Paul? That Khabib.
Hey, I tell you what, I was in the same hotel as all the Dagestanis, Russians, area of Russia that produces all the top fighters. And I said, God, blimey, you wouldn't upset them. Let me tell you that you wouldn't. Their entourage, I have to say, very polite, very nice, also very frightening when you see the physiques. And obviously, I was in the gym a bit, and when I'm working out, and then when I'm seeing them working out. Yeah, yeah. I'll stay out of the way as much as I can. Right, okay. Let's get back to some more mundane things. What have we got? Catherine Simkis, think I'm after 2. Right, okay. Evening from Duncan Comrie. Alex Jackson says the difference is intensity and excuse me, and squad options. Shane Walker, overall intensity, and Luke Williams. Lee Atkins, the difference is Luke Williams. Elliot Burrows, work rate and clinical finishing. Tony Brown, fitness and intensity, plus a talented head coach. Trevor Robinson, is it just me or did the boss look really tired? Remy Sky. So Remy, yeah, who joins us from New York, the Bronx all the time now. Ahoy pies, A plus stuff yesterday. I said I'd play the chicken dance song and do the chicken dance, which is an American wedding tradition. If Chickson snagged 3, no dance, but a big win. AD Clark, evening there, we start to believe we can get out of the league this season. Macca has to have get in. On his boots. Yeah. What a great one. Yeah, we'll have to have a word with the club and see whether he'll have get in stitched on his boots. Gary Smith, there's the big difference is work rate. Chris Gosling, the first 5 games under Luke weren't perfect, clearly adapting to the style, plus waiting for Kedwin Scott to join the party. Once the starting 11 got settled, we have moved through the gears. Remy Sky, I know it's different times, different game, different leagues. How does this start compared to the famous Allardyce promotion year? Sengo Schmidt, Ruben reminds me of Masson, even the way he runs. Chris Gosling, the Allardyce season didn't really hit top gear till Christmas, Remy. So at that point, you started pulling away. Zedo, fitness levels way up on previous. Pressing, intensity for 90 plus minutes. Interesting how many goals Forest Green Rovers have conceded 80 plus minutes. Set pieces were actually a threat and leading to goals. What else have we got? Max Seth Knots, after 15 games, looked like Stockport last season once they appointed Challoner. Different levels above. We'll come back to a few more in a moment. Stel, how much credit do you give to Luke Williams and his coaching staff?
Massive credit, absolutely massive credit. To come, you know, to come in and do it as quickly as he has. Let's not forget, he's only been in the building barely 4 months. If 4 months at all. In fact, what we end of October. To change. Let's have it right. He wasn't walking into a shower of a changing room and a squad. You know what I mean? He had good players there anyway. And there was a turnover of players in the summer. I think if you asked any Notts follower, myself included, on paper at the start of the season, would you prefer this season's players or last season's players individually? I don't think many had gone for this season because there was a lot of unproven players, obviously, that come in the summer. They've turned out so far to be absolute diamonds, and that's credit to the recruitment. But at the start of the season, I think I was concerned. Jaden Richardson going, Cal Roberts going, thinking, obviously Kyle Wootton having gone, thinking they're big gaps to fill. They're big players at the National League level to replace. And here we are within 15 league games, one cup game, and nobody talks about Cal, Jaden Richardson, Kyle Wootton. Nobody really gives them a mention other than to say maybe we're not missing them. And that is obviously credit to the players. It's the players that go out on the pitch at the end of the day and perform. But I think to get his way of playing and to change things and tweak things and drag an extra 5% out of all the players that are there from what they were giving. From what they were giving, that makes it sound like they weren't giving their all last season. But in terms of quality, intensity, as we've talked about, but a togetherness of understanding the role, understanding what Luke Williams wants them to do, as to what Ian Birchnell wanted to do. So there's credit for the players for taking it on, but the manager comes in, sets the tone, sets everything, and I think the standards. And certainly, somebody mentioned about the early games as well. Yes, they weren't quite as fluent then, and there's been one or two blips along the way, but minor blips. But I remember him coming in, and even after winning games at the start of the season, he wasn't happy. Gave the impression he wasn't happy, that he set standards high in training. And one or two whispers that have come back that you'd never get when a manager's there, but after he's gone, one or two whispers that things did get a little bit easy ozy in training last season. When things were going okay. But I don't think anybody's doing that with Luke Williams. I think he's got a bit more authority, maybe a bit more devil about him potentially, and I think that's kept the players switched on thus far. We are a third of the way through a season, so it's and again, to praise Luke Williams is not to castigate Ian Birchnell before it, like it isn't praising the players this season is not having a go at players of previous seasons. You have to take everything in its individuality. It's a different season, different group of players, different team, different manager, and a slightly different way of playing. And the way it's going so far is absolutely fantastic. But as we know with football, what's history has gone, and it's all about what's in front of us. 31 games left, so a long, long way to go. But it has been fantastic. But I think Luke Williams deserves massive credit, and to to put a doom and gloom moment on it early doors, think where Ian Birchnell went after what he achieved with Notts. He came and got cherry picked 2 divisions higher. People will be looking at Macaulay, Reuben, players like that. They will be looking at the manager as well and going, "Hey, what's gone on at Notts County? What's he added from a manager that's gone up 2 divisions, obviously rated as a coach and what have you?" Luke Williams will be being looked at. You think how quickly managers change in divisions way above us. There'll be clubs looking and going, "What's he got then? What's he done?" And they'll be monitoring the situation. Not just players, they'll be monitoring what happens in the dugout. Hopefully, it's on a long contract, so it's not a problem. But yeah, I mean, that's the way of football. That's what success brings. It brings a magnifying glass onto the club, and like I say, when you're successful, people will want a bit of it, or they want to copy it, or they want to find out what you're doing or what you've got. And if they see the magic ingredient, that little extra 5%, whatever, is the manager or head coach, as I suppose we should call him, then you can bet your bottom dollar he will be in demand should this carry on.
It's an interesting point to start. I totally agree with you. And, I think when Ian first came and there was a lot of talk about 4-year plans and all the rest of it. And I was always, as you know, fairly brutal to the point and very skeptical because to me, 4-year plans don't exist. They sound great when you pontificate about them. But as you've just said there, magnifying glass, focus. If you're doing something very, very well, someone wants to take a little piece of that. And look, let us be realistic. Is Macaulay Langstaff going to see out his 3-year contract at Notts? I'll be staggered if he does. You know, and I think you've kind of got to, carpe diem, savor the moment. We on the face of it now have a head coach coaching group players that I think for the first time since we dropped into the National League potentially can win it. I think as Martin Kelp made a very good point to me. He said, we've been in this league for 3 years. And in those 3 years, we've never really been the best team in this division at any point of those 3 years. There's an argument 7 or 8 games leading up to COVID and the cancellation of fixtures. There's an argument. We won at Barrow, didn't we? 7 or 8 fixtures. Other than that, we have been the 5th best team or the 6th best team or the 7th best team. I think at the minute we would be the team that everybody else would aspire to be, including Wrexham.
Well, absolutely. And look, if we want to get carried away from the doom and gloom, I'll go to the other end of the spectrum and say if, and it's a massive if, of course it is, if they can play like they are playing for the season, we win the league by 10 points minimum.
Oh.
I'm honest. I absolutely believe that. That is the level they're playing at. They're way above Wrexham. They're way above. I say way above. They beat Wrexham. The way they're playing, form and class, all that sort of thing. Form is temporary. It's a massive if they can do it. But they are absolutely just in a different league to the teams that they're playing at this moment. And long may it continue. Of course it can. But knowing football, as I sort of do, you've got to enjoy the good times while they're there because things can change and they can change quickly. And who knows, in 5 games, in 10 games time. But that's the challenge for the players. That's why they've got to stay grounded and deal with it a game at a time. Deal with the one opponent that's in front of them and get the job done. That's it. I can talk about, if they carry on like this for another 31 games, we win the league by 10 points minimum, because we do. Nobody will get close to the performance levels Notts have produced so far this season.
A very interesting step. Wrexham are still only 3 points behind us. If you take out the Notts Wrexham game, yeah, we won, they lost. Even allowing, so over 14 games, taking out the Notts Wrexham playing each other, Wrexham, who probably not fired on all cylinders by their admission of their own supporters, have still taken as many points as we have. And that kind of tells you the mark, the benchmark, the level of consistency you're going to be needing to hit to get that top spot.
Absolutely. And that's what we're talking about. If they can carry it on for the season, but let's not take the Wrexham result out because it exists. It's there. That is the difference between us and them. I don't imagine they're going to fall away massively. But again, if Notts produce the levels that they're doing, remember 6 wins on the spin, 6 goals away from home last night. I know Wrexham were countering that. They got the 5 at Dorking, where we came unstuck, So the reality is there are going to be blips along the way. It's who blinks the most times between now and the end of the season. Chesterfield will be there or thereabouts. I don't think they're quite as strong as Wrexham, but they've got goal scorers. You know, look, we can get carried away. We can get carried away, obviously, but also, you know, the note of caution is what happened to Shimanga last season. You know, you're only ever one injury away from the wheels coming off a little bit. So it's great while that where they are and the levels that they're playing at. That's the most impressive thing. They have got they've got an intuitiveness as a team understanding that has come so quickly, has been replicated, you know, plenty of times in these games that show you it's not a fluke. It's not just it's a good game. Sometimes you have games like that. This is a style of play, a method of play, and whatever you want to call it, a philosophy is that, you know, the modern word. But they have got the X factor at the minute where it is all coming together, and they just look invincible. Although they've already lost a game, but they look invincible at this minute. 6 consecutive wins, but not just scraping over the line, absolutely dominating games, outplaying teams, outclassing teams. And yes, people go, well, the Wrexham game was tight, but even then, in the first half, well, first 20 minutes, 25 minutes, absolutely played them off the park. And yes, Wrexham came back second half and put us right under the cosh, and we rode our luck a little bit, but we got the job done. And I think there's that steeliness. I think is a difference between this season and last season. I think there's a steeliness, a determination to get the job done. When they play well, they win the game. Nobody beats us. We win the game. But football, a 46 game season, is usually mainly about which of the good teams get the job done when you're not playing your A game, when you're not at 100%. Get the job done. You think of Stockport's run last season, ridiculous run after, you know, they brought Dave Challoner in. Absolutely, was it 28 wins out of 30? Something ridiculous. But they didn't play well for all them games, but they got the
Absolutely.
job done. And it's the same for any team in any division.
Yeah, good word, steeliness and getting the job done. I remember, I don't know what other people's views are that are listening in now. Um, I remember when we played Grimsby in the playoff last season, and if I'm being brutally honest, I wasn't confident. I didn't think there was a prayer we would win the playoffs, and I didn't really fancy us too much against Grimsby. And everyone I spoke to, you know, off camera here, um, I couldn't find a person around me in the stand in the Pavis and other people I was talking to kind of actually thought we were going to win, you know, because although we played wonderful football for large parts of the season, I think it's fair to say there was always a concern about a soft underbelly. And as Grimsby went on to prove in the playoffs, it's that eking something out, finding a way. And we played lovely football, but there wasn't always a great deal of resilience about us. And I think if you're asking me what's one of the biggest differences, I think there is more resilience. You know, it amuses me sometimes when people say, "Oh, we didn't play very well today." You know, we won 2-0. Great, 3 points, all that matters. And like you've just said, and we're going to need to churn out 10 or 15 of those types of wins this season. Yeah, and if you do, we'll be there or thereabouts. You know, we'll be. It's
Absolutely.
almost to me now we're playing more efficiently, and in a kind of style and way, which there is a blueprint and there is a formula that many other teams that have won titles have adopted and followed, rather than a slightly left field, different approach sort of thing. I think we're more mainstream in terms of the way we approach games under this coaching team. Uh, and You know, Wrexham, there are others. We nick a few late goals here and there. For me, they're the kind of ingredients that, you know, the players that wore these shirts behind me all had to have. And I don't think you can do it without that.
No, you've got to say for 46 games, if they play like they do, we walk it, not a problem. But you suspect history tells you
Yeah,
that not. I don't think there's ever been a team, even the Arsenal Invincibles. You know, they had off days. they managed to not get beat. But there's teams that have off days throughout a season. 46 games. You're going to have injuries, suspensions. We've got one Saturday. Things are going to happen. It's just not going to click. That is inevitable in a 46 game season. But just because you don't play your A game doesn't mean it's inevitable that you don't get a result. And again, like we're saying, that's what the best teams do. When they're not on their A game, they still get results. They don't get beat, and the really good teams go and win games, even playing way below the levels that they can. So, phenomenal start to the season. Phenomenal start to the season. But they've got to keep it going, because if you believe that Wrexham are going to go all the way and not fall away, and maybe Chesterfield as well and Solihull, you can't afford to say, in 20 games time, do you remember that great start we had to the season? Shame we've just let it slip or slide. And that's it. And that's the pressure of professional sport, and certainly professional football, where games come thick and fast. You win one, you score 6 at Wealdstone, but come Saturday at 3 o'clock, that means nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you've got to go and do it again. Not necessarily score 6, but that'd be nice. But go and win the game. And every game starts from scratch with an opposition that has got their plans, been training all week or for a few days to stop you playing and to win the game themselves. So that's the challenge always. You don't just climb a mountain once. You've got 46 games, 46 mountains to climb. And if you scale the vast majority of them, and you're going to need it when there's only one up in the National League, then you've got every chance. And this start and the way we're playing gives us every chance of being able to do it.
Let's get some more thoughts and comments. Chris Gosling, to maintain our projected points total, we could only drop roughly 18 more points. Kane Porter says we didn't have the killer instinct last season. We'd pass it around the defence at 1-0 down in the 85th minute. ZO says, will the publicity hype around Wrexham be their undoing? Really don't see their manager welcoming a camera following his every move for the US documentary. Andrew Blathwick, I thought it would be tough down there last night, but great result and performance. I would have been happy just to have got a scrappy 1-0. It's Jarias regarding the Grimsby game. I just felt that Ian had the Forest Green job on his mind. There was no drive in that game. Grimsby wanted it more. Shane Walker says, got to enjoy riding this wave of joy at the moment, having followed Notts for over 55 years. You know there is going to be a downside at some point. Joseph Spinks, I agree on the Grimsby game, Paul. I also didn't think we'd win it, and the result wasn't a surprise to many Notts fans. Chris Cosling Wilson didn't even look like a bad side. We were just unplayable for 60 minutes. Torquay still. If there's a banana skin floating around in the National League for Notts County, looking at previous results, a less than friendly relationship with Gary Johnson and Notts County, not just when he's at Torquay, but other clubs as well. We do struggle against them. We reserve some of our worst performances of previous seasons against them. They're bottom. They're living proof in a way of how you can come so close to going up. And certainly for a while, they were the best team in the National League for probably 6 months. Didn't go up, lose their players, and they're kind of on one of those downward spirals. How much of a banana skin is Torquay Saturday?
Yeah, well, being bottom of the table, it's obviously a big banana skin, because people will look at it and again, like a lot of games, with the way Notts are playing, the positions of the table, top v bottom, certainly top team at home as well. It's an absolute nailed-on 3-point win for Notts, isn't it, for anybody looking at that fixture from the outside in? And I wouldn't disagree with them, because the way Notts are playing, I'm that confident. But it is always a banana skin for the reasons I've just said about 3 o'clock Saturday. Doesn't matter what's gone before it. You've got to do it again. You can't live on history. You can't live on things gone by. As great as the first 15 games have been, it matters nothing come Saturday. So they've got to do it again. They've got to perform. They've got to go out. You know, I say Richard Brindley won't be available, so they've got to just slightly shuffle it around there. But I don't see that being a massive factor. And let's be honest, we owe Torquay at least one. So hopefully we can get that Saturday and shove a right few goals in.
Whatever we say about Mr. Johnson, I don't know whether it's because we've played badly. He seems to have had a lot of success in setting up teams to stop us playing as well as we would ordinarily expect. Presumably, he will try and do exactly the same on Saturday.
I wouldn't imagine Gary Johnson's going to change his team at all. I did watch a bit of, they played Altrincham, didn't they, on the telly on Saturday, and because we played Friday night, I was sad enough to watch a bit of that, I suppose, but just to have a look at them. And yeah, they struggled against Altrincham. The bit that I saw, I only probably watched about 20 minutes of it. Obviously, they came back. It was a hell of a game, 4 goals each. But yeah, they don't look the same team that we played. And like you mentioned, we're running away with the league, weren't they? Was it not last season before? You know, so they're bottom of the table. The table does tell you a little bit of you get what you deserve. And as good as we've said about Notts, Torquay have obviously been struggling. So a great chance to put one over on them. It really is.
On the basis, and if you could just keep talking as loud as you can, Stel, because one or two people are saying there you're a little bit faint tonight. Don't worry. But we always end up talking about Macaulay Langstaff, and why not, and why not. To play devil's advocate here, how much would you say Notts could be construed as a one-man team at the minute?
Not at all. Not at all. Anybody who wants to throw that's a lazy accusation from obviously opposite fans or whatever. Absolutely not at all. Because Macaulay Langstaff doesn't score his own goals. As great as his finishing is, as great as his movement is, as great as his work rate is at the National League level, he relies on the other players. The through ball from Ruben last night being an absolute prime example. I'm thinking back to the Halifax game, Kedwin Scott's through ball for him, you know, releasing him. You know, I think every goal he's scored, he's reliant on the rest of the team. So anybody who says it's a one-man band, one-man team is, you know, like I say, jealousy is a funny thing, isn't it? You know, envy or downright not really knowing anything about football.
Okay, well, that kind of like nails that one. And Andrew Blatherwick's come up with a stat here. He says Chickson has more goals than Shimanga this season. Andrew Blatherwick says proverbial coupon buster. I hope we stick 5 or 6 past them, and Johnson has to go home with his tail between his legs. Wouldn't call him a fraud, but he's certainly a one-trick pony. Yeah, look, Andrew, I know he's not very popular with Notts fans, but what I would say is, if you look at his career in the game, whatever your personal views are, he's delivered several promotions. You know, I'm sure, you know, Yeovil beating Forest and all that lot. We all thought he was great then. Look, he's a decent manager. I think it's fair to say he's had his run-ins with Notts, when he was at Yeovil, Bristol City, Peterborough, you name it, he's had some running with us. But I think, as Stel said there is a great opportunity to lay to rest one or two very poor results against Torquay on Saturday. What other comments have we got coming in? Oh, and are we all still there? Oh, sorry about that. I don't know whether you disappeared or not. Something happened to my screen, which may or may not explain why you're a bit quiet tonight. Here's one. Zedo, will the publicity hype around Wrexham be their undoing? Really don't see their manager welcoming a camera following his every move for the US documentary. And I think this possibly also ties in, Stel, with Notts having owners now who are very understated, very reserved, and our owners have gone about it in a certain way at Notts, and clearly, given their cachet and their A-lister stardom in Hollywood, Wrexham's owners have gone about it in a slightly different way. What do you think about the documentary, The Hype, and how do you think that either positively or adversely affects the pressure, if you like, that is put on manager and players game to game, week by week? We know everyone needs to win every week, but it's done in a very um, heavy duty media glare there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest, Paul. I've not seen a second of the documentary. I've not. I don't think I've got the channel that it's on. I don't know what channel it's on, but I don't think I've got it. But I've not really searched it out. Yeah, I think pressure, does it put added pressure on them? I suppose it can do. Pressure generally builds towards the end of a season, towards something actually being decided, something finite coming to an end. That's when pressure tends to build. So I don't think it'll be a problem for them if it's being shot now. I suppose it's been shot all the while through, but I don't see it being a massive problem for them now. It might be interesting come the last 10 games, say, for instance, they are neck and neck with Notts or, there or thereabouts, then obviously it is just a scrutinizer, isn't it? It's a magnifying glass on them, and an inside story to them that if things do start going wrong, it's there for people to see. Obviously, whatever gets edited out, what footage gets shown and things like that. But great from a marketing perspective for them. Like I say, when pressure starts eating people, be it Phil Parkinson, be it the players, that's when you might find a few snaps because you don't want a camera crew following you around and in your face and things like that. But we can only hope it works against them.
We'll see. Chris Gosling says you're not missing much, Stell. They use subtitles as the American audience can't understand the Welsh accents. To be fair, I've got to say, I don't think it's a bad documentary series, actually. I don't think it's bad. You have to remember this is shot for an American audience. It's not designed to be watched really in England. This is an American audience being exposed to a small Welsh football club trying to reclaim its place back in the Football League, and the story of two Hollywood A-listers, if you like, trying to reinvent the club. Chris B says Wrexham have struggled against the better sides in the division and choked in all their bigger games. They've lost to us and to Chesterfield, haven't they, I think? Here's a stat. You're the stats king, Stell. I assume this is right. Just 2 defeats in the last 30 home games at Meadow Lane. Did you realise it was quite that?
I don't know the number of home games it was, but I know Charlie had it on Friday. Yeah, I think that is right in the over the calendar year. I think it isn't just about. Is that right? I will have to double check, but Charlie had the stat on Friday about two home league defeats, and 30 sounds about right. Yeah, it does.
That's some going at home. Oh yeah, that is some going. It's all leading up to one thing on Saturday. The way we're going, aren't we? There has to be an enforced change on Saturday, Stan. So you've got your head coach's hat on. What would you be doing?
Good question, and that is the one block from last night, Richard Brinley. His own sloppiness has cost him. Cost the team a player on Saturday. We hope it's not going to be too decisive because we hope we've got the majority of the ball. With me head coach cap on, if you like. What do I think Luke Williams is going to do? I think, given that Aidan Baldwin is okay, no adverse effect, then I think he comes in and starts centrally and he just pushes Connell to the right-hand side, which is what he did after he came on. So that's not particularly Nostradamus. That's just using my own eyes from last night. what other options has he got? He could drop Bajrami back there and bring, say, Ed Francis into midfield, Sam Austin into midfield. I don't know as if he'd want that. That's sort of making one missing person is leading to a couple of changes then. So I think he'd want to leave Matty Palmer and Bajrami in the middle of the park. So for me, fairly straightforward. Aidan Baldwin, as long as he's okay to start the game, starts at the centre, and Connell just on the right hand side of the three.
A few of you guys, Jurgen Halligan, you'd say put Bajrami at the back and bring Austin in. Andrew Blatherwick concurs. Bajrami in a back five, Austin in midfield. Is another stat just to keep heaping the pressure on Saturday. And again, you and Charlie will know these, but I don't always get to. I wasn't able to get the commentary when I was in Qatar, try as I might, for Friday night Maidstone. So I don't know whether you used this. According to Chris Gosling, we've scored in 40 successive competitive home games.
Yeah, again, I think that's one Charlie had as well. Yeah, he had that last night. Yeah.
I mean, that takes some doing, I've got to say.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It all goes, and again, it adds fuel to the fire that we weren't a disaster last season under Ian Birchnell, no matter, with Carl Wootton, no matter what people say or think or, want to heap praise on Luke Williams for it, it is just a sign of how good Notts can be, how good they are and consistent. And certainly, the owners, we don't talk about them a lot. We don't talk about the owners a lot, and they deserve so much praise because remember, when they came into the club, their edict, their mandate, if you like, was for Notts to play attractive, passing, progressive football. They brought in a manager in here, Birchnell, when they got rid of Neil Ardley, that nobody had really heard of, nobody knew, and the football was attractive. It was better going forward. It was fantastic at times. They've brought in Luke Williams, who wasn't in the running when we were discussing who was going to replace Ian Birchnell. Nobody had mentioned that name, and he's come in and raised the bar again. And the football is fantastic to watch. Fantastic to watch. So, but that all comes, as we say, the team is a sort of a picture of what the manager dictates. The manager is there because the owners have set down an edict that, filters down throughout a club, sets down a philosophy, and they've bought into that. And credit goes to Alex and Christopher because, and the rest of, the board and people at that sort of level who make decisions, because you don't hear a peep out of them. You don't hear anything from them hardly. They just set that mandate and they've appointed people, and the football on the pitch tells its own story, and people will be loving watching Notts, not just this season, for a period of time now. Notts have been really good to watch. Obviously, you want to ally being good to watch with success, and we all know what success means in the National League. But at this minute, we have got a great chance of achieving that, allied to that success, allied to them fantastic stats. Notts are a great team to watch at the minute. A great team to watch, and they're giving the fans value for money. Fans pay a lot of money, as you know, and don't always get a return. But I would say over the last 12 months or so, I know we've not got promotion, and that Grimsby game hurt, like the failures before have hurt. But I think they're getting real value for the money that they do pay, from the players giving everything, the manager trying his utmost, trying to instill that, and the owners that are, the role model of ownership, really. Put some money in, put a mandate down, employ people, and then leave it to them.
I tell you what, though, Star, isn't it incredible? It is the princely sum of, let's get this right, 11 days since we lost to Colville and got knocked out of the FA Cup. Amazing how these things twists and turns. And I guess if ever there's a salutary lesson, that when you think you've cracked it, football has this habit of kicking you in the teeth. It is quite amazing. We lost to Colville. which taken in isolation, I think I said, is probably one of the 10 worst results in the club's history, if you factor things in. Quite incredible that we are where we are now again, and the whole approach and relationship between fans and players and manager, and we're all very, very, very happy. But it was only 11 days ago that we lost to Colville.
Yeah, but that goes to show what we were saying about there's ups and downs. Now there are reasons for it, and I missed the game, Paul, because I had COVID, so I missed that game. But that was an embarrassing result. There's no other word for it. Not to lose to Colville in the FA Cup is embarrassing. But there were 8 changes, which, okay, people will go, well, that highlights the strength in depth. Maybe isn't there. Maybe the mentality on the day wasn't right. The intensity and tempo and everything that we speak about wasn't right. But that can happen. And that's where I go back to every game in isolation is an event. Every single game is a mountain to climb. At Colville, and again, I'm not there, so I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but they barely got out of base camp in terms of the game. So, but the beauty is from what's been before that and what's gone since that is they've got so much credit in store, I think, with the fans that all football fans will moan. I moaned about, losing to Colville. Embarrassing. It is embarrassing, no two ways. But when you look at the results, you look at the league table, you go, all right, blip. Fair enough, blip. Bad day at the office. Embarrassing. But it's put to one side because they've absolutely done the business. 6 wins on the spin in the league. 6 goals scored at Wealdstone. But in the midst of that 6 wins, we've lost to Colville. Go figure. How does that work? It makes no logical sense. But football doesn't at times. It doesn't make logical sense. But there are reasons and factors. 8 changes. Players' mentality maybe not being right. Colville playing way above themselves in their cup final, and not being right, not being at it. And all them factors contribute. You can always come undone in professional sport. Always.
Yeah, and I think it's just a very salutary lesson, isn't it? That as much as we are in fine fettle at the minute, and we all think we're invincible, and we do in the next third what we've done in the first third, and this, that, and the other, but just as a habit, really, as we would all know, of not happening like that. It's Jarius says, personally, I love how our owners have managed our club. They have invested, kept in the background, and have kept communication with the fans. Also, Jason's done a great job by keeping us informed too. So many people behind the scenes are doing a fantastic job, and we're all going together in the same direction. Chris Gosling adds, we've had 2 setbacks this season and instantly put them to bed with brilliant performances. He adds, that's right, Stel. When we see the effort being put in, we allow the odd indiscretion. I've not heard that FA Cup exit being called an indiscretion, but a good word, because I think we all know this team has the mettle to bounce back. Derek Flowers, Colville game is forgotten. Duncan Comrie, the Colville game could be a blessing, as now we have a chance to put more daylight between us and them come the South End game. Richard Bolton, Stell, spot on, concentrate on the league, let's get up. Well, firstly, I didn't realise this, Stell, so are you fully recovered from the old COVID now? Did it knock you for 6 a bit, or?
No, I'm fine, yeah. I've tested negative, so, 5, 6 days, 6 days, I think it was, but yeah, I was fine. It was just like cough and cold. If my missus works for the NHS, so that's the reason we had tests. Cough and cold. So I did one. Yeah, first time positive. 2.5 years afterwards, and all jabbed up, all vaccinated up, and everything. And now I get it. But no, cough and cold. That was it. But obviously you've got to isolate. So I had I think about 6 days isolation, and yeah, right as rain again now. Well, as right as I'll ever be. But yeah.
Hey, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. We'll wrap up shortly. What? Look, we all know about consistency and everything else. If we are being hypercritical here, is there anything that you think we need to fine tune, be wary of? Would you be, we've had this conversation before. Would you be looking to bring anybody else in at this moment while we are, inverted commas, in such a great position?
Yeah, you've always got to be wary. You've always got to be wary. I like to say it's not just hyperbole saying, football brings you down to level professional sport. You've never cracked it. Every game is an event. Because everything we've got, data, form, everything like that, is all history. It's gone. It's in the books. It can't be changed. The only thing you change is what happens going forward. If Notts produce another Colville performance, then the wheels can come off. And we know through teams, any Notts team of any era, we know how form is up and down. Even championship winning teams, that next season, the Sam Allardyce team, next season struggled. And, it's gone up a division, so football, sport finds a way. There's no one team dominates everything. Even in the Premier League, with all that money, with all the best players, yes, Man City look like they're going to have a chance, but Arsenal there this season, Leicester win it a few years back, Liverpool and Man City vie for it. You are never comfortable. So what we've got to be wary of is, like we've spoken about, a complacency setting in. We're playing so well, we just have to go out and do it, and it'll happen. It doesn't work like that. You have to work and you have to earn it. Excuse me. So they've got to work hard. That intensity has got to be maintained, and that is not easy. It's dead easy for us to sit here and talk about, oh, the intensity is great, oh, the tempo is great. Just do it again. Just do it again. The players have to sweat and work hard and grind and do the work in training. We only see the match days, but I know as a player, you don't just get lucky on a Saturday that, everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone finds a pass. Macaulay puts it in the back of the Adam Chickson with finishing like Roberto Carlos last night. That doesn't just happen by accident. There's hard work and preparation and blood, sweat, tears, as the old analogy goes into it. So they've got to keep that going. They've got to maintain that. They are going to be their own worst enemy this season because, like I say, for the levels they're producing, if they can carry on producing it, then I don't see too much of a problem. There'll be ups and downs, absolutely. This is Notts County, in it. They've got to be, but they have got the ability, they've got the work rate, they've got the quality, and they've got that intensity, tempo that it seems like a never say die steeliness about them to get it done. But they've got to keep doing it, and they're the ones. It's in their hands. If they can keep producing, I'd be absolutely confident of them winning the league. But put that aside. Say between now and then, the end of the season, something happens. Knowing just what we know now, you said about last season, Grimsby, you didn't really honestly fancy us. If Notts, if we knew now Notts were going to be in the playoffs at the end of the season, based on what we've seen, you would not fear Notts playing anybody in the playoffs at the end of this season. I'm sure you wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm sure most of the fans wouldn't. But again, we've got to get there. We've got to get to the end of the season. So a lot of water's got to flow under the bridge. But the thing to be wary of is that complacency, that easing the foot off the pedal, and you've just got to hope with injuries you don't get affected by them, injuries and suspensions.
Let's get a closing roundup of comments. Chris Gosling referring to Stell and his COVID. Stell's made of granite. Derek Flowers, corners need a bit of fine tuning, if anything. Chris Gosling adds, I don't think we need to bring anyone in unless it's forced on us through unforeseen circumstances. Don't upset the balance. Duncan Conry says, Derek, I'd say all our set pieces could do with fine tuning a little. Did all right last night, didn't it? I've only been able to see it on the highlights, but the goal, the work free kick, and Chickson putting it in, that seemed a well-worked free kick to me. Tony Brown, still think we're partial to a defensive lapse, particularly away from home. Crack that and we really will be in business. More clean sheets, please. People know how much I talk about that. Richard Bolton. We don't need to bring players in. We need to keep the players we have got, i.e. Macaulay Langstaff. Shane Walker, Luke won't let them take their foot off the pedal. Paul Farnsworth, Disney FC have too many princesses in their team. It's going to be happy ever after. There you are, a bit of prose from Paul there. Chris B. Castro with us till January, I think, just not proving himself on Colville game. Was a bit of a nail in the coffin for him. Chris Gosling loved some of our kick-off routines, though. Okay, well, that probably just about wraps it up. We're just on the hour mark now. I trust you will be in your normal commentary position on Saturday, Stell, and hoping to be able to comment on Torquay finally being put to the sword for once.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be there, normal position as per, and yeah, we owe them one, don't we? At least one. So disappointing. It was the second game of the season last season, I think, was it? We drew at home.
And they had 10 men, didn't they?
We owe them one at home. I know we got battered at their place, didn't we? That was probably the worst performance for a long time. But yeah, we definitely owe them one. And you know, all the sort of euphoria of last night and the culmination of 6 wins on the spin. We don't want it to end. We want it to go to 7, 8, 9. You know, 2 home games coming up now. You know, Torquay and Bromley. Say, you've got to climb the mountain again both times, but there's no reason why not with that record that Notts have got at home. Who's to say in a week's time we're not sat here with 6 more points?
Let's hope so. Thank you very much indeed to everyone tonight. Great to have your company as always. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you to Mark for joining us and giving up his time as always. Torquay Saturday. We'll be back on Monday night and hopefully we have got another 3 points, another win, another clean sheet. And all in the garden at Meadow Lane is looking rosy. Thank you very much indeed. We look forward to catching up with you next week. Bye for now.
Cheers.